Happy Monday, everybody. So today we are going to start talking about multiples of unit fractions. That is our Go Math lesson 8.1, and it's pages 455 to 460. And you should be looking at your calendar, but this is for Monday, which is today, April 27th, and tomorrow, April 28th. So just a review of our topic today and going over some key vocabulary. Multiples of unit fractions. Multiples. We have done multiples a lot this year, and multiples, I told my kids that multiples means multiply, and you can always think of it like M&M, and M&Ms are Mrs. Hamilton's favorite candy. So that's how I had told my kids to remember what the word multiples means. But multiples do mean to multiply or to skip count, and really it's just your multiplication facts. So over here I have the multiples of 8, and 8 times 1 is 8, 8 times 2 is 16, 8 times 3 is 24. So 8, 16, and 24 are multiples of 8. And not just them, but 8 times 4 is 32, 8 times 5 is 40, so those are all your multiples. So really you're skip counting by 8. 8, 16, 24, 32, 40, and so on. Unit fractions are fractions that have a numerator of 1. Remember that our numerator is our top number, our denominator is our bottom number, and this line in between our fraction line really means to divide. So a unit fraction has a numerator of 1. So if we look over here at the fraction 4/5, and we take that and we put 4/5 into unit fractions, we would have 1/5 plus 1/5 plus 1/5 plus 1/5. And we know that that's correct because 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 equals 4 all over your denominator of 5. So always remember that a unit fraction has a numerator of 1 and you keep the same denominator, okay? So if you have 4/5, you would have 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 all over 5. All right, so today, like we said, we are talking about multiples of unit fractions. And I'm going to do my first example here, and I'm going to use a model. And remember that a model is a picture, and pictures really do help us think about the question we are answering. When we are doing our word problems in math or our story problems, we can draw pictures of what that story problem is saying, which will help us visualize the problem and help us kind of break it down and understand the parts and the pieces that we need to do. So always remember that when you're doing your word problems. Always remember to break that problem down and draw it out. Draw pictures of any piece that you can draw. So this is our first fraction that we're talking about, and it's 1 times 1/3. Okay? So what I did here is I drew a model. I know it has 3 pieces because that is my denominator. So I cut my model into 3 pieces, and I know I'm coloring 1 in because that's my numerator. So I colored 1 in right here. Okay? So 1 times 1/3, if you look at our model right here, it's 1/3 because that's how many pieces are colored in right here. Oh, my cat's coming up to see you. Oh. She wants to learn math too. All are welcome. So if we look at our next model, I have 2 times 1/3. So I drew 2 models. I broke each model into 3 pieces, and I colored 1 section in each model. So I have a section here colored, and I have a section here colored. So really, this is 1/3 plus 1/3, which equals 2/3. Okay. I moved on to 3 times 1/3. Okay, 3 is my whole number, and 1/3 is my fraction. So how many models should I have here if I need 3 times 1/3? Yep, you guessed it. I should have 3 models. And how many pieces should each of these models be broken into? That's right. They should be broken into 3 pieces because that is what our denominator tells us. So each of these pieces are 1/3 of this model, or 1/3 of this candy bar. So I am eating 3 of these 1/3 pieces. So I'm eating this piece, I'm eating this piece, and I'm eating this piece. So I have 1/3 plus 1/3 plus 1/3, which equals 1 plus 1 plus 1 is 3 all over your denominator of 3. So 3 times 1/3 equals 3/3. I know all of you are screaming at me right now because 3/3, all of you know, equals 1 whole. Remember, anytime you have a fraction where the numerator and the denominator are the same digit or the same number, that is 1 whole. So 7 over 7, or 10 over 10, or 100 over 100, all of those equal 1 whole. Because if you take this pie, and I'm breaking this pie into 3 pieces, because that's what my denominator says, and I'm eating 3 of these pieces. I had this one for breakfast, this one for lunch, and this one for dinner. I ate the entire pie. I ate the whole entire thing. So that is 1 whole thing. So remember again, anytime your fraction has a numerator and a denominator with the same number or the same digit as the numerator and denominator, it's 1 whole. Always, always, always. All right, I know that was quick. You will see an example like this in your textbook on page 456. So I just wanted to give you a little rundown of what it was, just so you weren't confused. And you know now that you can use pictures to do any of these problems that you might have. All right, I'm going to switch sides here. Hi, camera. Okay, so on the other side of my board right here, this is the majority of what your chapter, your lesson 8.1 is going to look like. And your directions say, write the fraction as a product of a whole number and a unit fraction. So there's some words there that we need to review just so we are clear with what they mean. The word product, think for a second, what does the word product mean? Oh, I can hear all of you screaming from here. It means to multiply. So you know that in all of these questions, you're going to need a multiplication sign in there. A whole number, we just looked at over there, and a whole number is something like this, 7 over 7, or 5 over 5. A whole number is the whole entire piece, all the pie. The whole pie is eaten, or the whole candy bar is eaten. And remember that it is when your numerator and your denominator are exactly the same. And from up here, we remember that a unit fraction has a numerator of 1. So if I have this fraction, 3/6, and I want to break that down into unit fractions, I'm going to take 3/6 and I'm going to say 1/6 plus 1/6 plus 1/6. That is 3/6 written in unit fractions. Remember doing that? Yeah, that was before we had to leave school, but that's a pretty simple concept, I think, for many of you. So this should be okay. Because always remember, all you do is you take this numerator, and if it's a 3, I have 1 plus 1 plus 1. That equals 3. And I always leave, in this case, leave my denominator the same, so it's 6. Okay, so now we're going to look at how we turn a fraction into a product of a whole number and a unit fraction. So we need, and we know in all of our answers, we are going to need three parts. We need the product sign, we need a whole number, and we need a unit fraction. So let's look at our first example right here. I have 9/12. The simplest way for me to describe this to you is to take your 9 or your numerator, and this goes right over here and becomes your whole big number. Always. It doesn't matter what your numerator is, it always just gets moved over and becomes your whole big number right here. So I took my numerator and I flew it over here and it became my whole number. Okay? I know it's a product, so I know I need my multiplication symbol right there. So I put it there, my little X. And now I know that I need a unit fraction. Remembering that a unit fraction always has a numerator of 1. So, again, the simplest way for me to explain this to you, you take your denominator, which in this case is a 12, you fly it right over here. You put a fraction line or a division line and stick a 1 on top. So 9/12 written as a product of a whole number and a unit fraction is 9 times 1/12. See, that's not so bad. All right, let's look at some more examples so you guys can get the hang of this. So my next fraction is 3/7. So looking at my first example, I'm going to take my 3. I'm going to fly it over here, and it is going to become my whole big whole number. Okay? I know I need my multiplication sign, so I'm going to put it right here. And now I need my unit fraction. I get my unit fraction by taking my denominator, flying it over here, putting it right there. I put my fraction line, and I put a 1 right on the top because that's my unit fraction. I know my unit fraction needs a numerator of 1. So 3/7 equals 3 times 1/7. I'll let that sink in for a second. Okay, let's look at 4/5. Okay, so I need my whole number, and I'm telling you that you take your numerator, you fly it over here, and you write it big, and it becomes your whole number. I know I need my multiplication symbol, so I'm going to put my X there, or my multiplication symbol. And now I need my unit fraction. Again, unit fractions always have a numerator of 1, so the simplest way is to take your 5, fly it over here, take your denominator, fly it over, put your fraction line, and put a 1 on top. So 4/5 written as a product of a unit fraction and a whole number are 4 times 1/5. Our last question, or our last example, is 7/8. I'm going to give you a few seconds, and I want you to see if you can do this one all by yourself, because we just did 3 examples. So see if you can do it all by yourself. Remember our steps. Remember what your numerator becomes. Remember what your denominator becomes. Everybody just about done? Okay, so let's look at it. 7/8. I need my whole big number. Where does my whole number come from? You are absolutely right. It comes from your numerator right here. So you take it and you fly that 7 right over, and it becomes your whole number. I know I need my multiplication sign in there, my multiplication symbol, so there it goes. And now the last part is my unit fraction. What is special about a unit fraction? What does it always have as its numerator? That's right, it always has a 1. And I think we get our denominator by doing what? That's right, you take your denominator right here, you fly it over, it becomes your denominator. You put your fraction line. Unit fraction always has a numerator of 1. So 7/8 written as a product of a whole number and a unit fraction are 7 times 1/8. Okay, look at that for 1 second. I know that was a lot at one time. But this is just a little short start to this lesson. The problems in your textbook are going to look pretty much like this right here, and it's going to tell you to write it as a fraction or as a unit fraction and a whole number. So that's why I did so many of these examples right here. So just as a review, we always, when we are taking a fraction and writing it as a fraction, as a product of a whole number and a unit fraction, we take our numerator, which is our top digit or our top number, we fly it over and it becomes our whole big number. We know that product means multiply, so we have to put our multiplication sign in there. And we know with our unit fractions, we have to have a numerator of 1. So we get our denominator by using this same denominator that we are starting with in our fraction, and we fly it over. It becomes our denominator, and we slap a 1 on top, and that's how we make our unit fraction. And remember, when you are doing unit fractions, 4/5, for example, remember when you break it up into 4/5, it's 1/5 plus 1/5 plus 1/5 plus 1/5, because 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 is 4 all over the denominator of 5. In this particular lesson, you don't have to touch your denominators at all. They will stay the same. So, ladies and gentlemen, your work for today is this right here, okay? You are doing 456 read over, page 455. It's just a little word problem question, but it does start the chapter off. And then 456 is a question that looks like this. And then 457 is all of these types of questions and when you're breaking a fraction into a unit fraction. And then 458 is a problem where you have to think about what the two characters in the problem are doing and how they are doing their work. So that is your assignment for today. It is not a lot. And if you need any help, please contact your teacher and they will be more than happy to go over what I have just went over. I will be up here again on Wednesday to talk about lesson 8.2. I hope this was helpful for you. And again, if you need any other help, please contact your teacher. Have a wonderful rest of your day.